It's a hot afternoon, clear skies, and we're on the search for the royals. And this is Safari Live. Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Sunset Safari. Special warm welcome to Providence and Allenton, who are joining us. Those are our schools for today. It's really great to have you guys. Remember that it is a live drive, so if you want to get hold of us, we would love to hear from you. You can send through your questions at #SafariLive or questions@WildEarthTV. My name is Tristan, and on camera today we have Brian and his special thumb. What thumb have we got today, Brian?
Just the tie, the working tie.
The working tie thumb. So back to the grind after the TV show this morning, so back to work for the thumb. And as I said just now, we are on the search for the royals. So we are looking for any sign of Marula and the cubs. It is an exceptionally warm day today, so it is about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I'm hoping that maybe they've gone to go look for water. So we're on our way to... It's 94, that's what Rebecca tells me, exactly 94, so very, very warm today. So we're on our way to Treehouse Pan, which is not too far from where they were left this morning. I'm hoping that because of the heat, maybe they've tried to find themselves some water and then some shade nearby. So we're just having a slow look around, just trying to see if there's any sign of their tracks. I don't think they would have moved too much because of the extreme heat. It was already quite hot this morning, so I don't know if they'll be moving, but you never know with a leopard. A leopard is one of those animals that can move around even in the most extreme heat. You always think that they are only going to move in the night time, but they're actually quite at home moving through the day and even in very, very warm conditions. Now, going towards these water holes, even if the leopards are not there, it's always a good place to go and have a look, because at this time of the day, a lot of the antelopes and the elephants and the buffalo, they're all going to be very hot and thirsty too, so they're also going to want to come to the water hole for a drink. So hopefully, if the leopards are not there, one of them will be there. We actually haven't seen too many animals yet this afternoon. It's been bit quiet, but I'm sure they'll be around. Alright, so we're going to carry on our search, and while we do that, we're going to go across to Jamie on Bushwalk.
And a very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome on our Sunset Safari, and the bushwalk portion of this Sunset Safari. My name is Jamie, and this afternoon VM is on camera with me, and it is absolutely lovely to welcome the two schools joining us. I hope you guys are really, really excited to see some truly amazing things out here in the African wilderness. So don't forget, while you're with us, send through as many questions as you can, and we'll try and get through as much as possible, because there's just so much to learn out here. Now, Tristan's absolutely right. Going to visit the water holes sounds like the perfect plan on a hot, very hot afternoon like this afternoon. It is sweaty weather. Now, we're going to be on foot. We're going to be very, very careful, very safe, so you don't need to be worried about us in any way. We're very used to walking out here. It's actually relatively safe, provided that you know what you're doing and that you're constantly observing your surroundings. And the lovely thing about being on foot is that it gets you closer to the ground, obviously, because you're not in a car, and it allows you to see some things that you might miss if you're driving around in a vehicle. And that's the plan for this afternoon. First, we're going to go and see if we can help the guys find the lions, who apparently came to visit us this morning. So we're going to go and see if we can help them follow that. And at the same time, we'll be looking for things like snakes and scorpions and all sorts of other things. Now, Linnea, sorry, Rebecca, did I mishear that? What kind of park? Or what kind of? Linnea's asked me. Plants! Plants! There we go. Sorry, Linnea. You want to know what kind of plants there are. Linnea, lots and lots of different types. So there's different species of grass. This, for example. And this. these are two different species of grass, completely separate species. And we get multiple different species of grass. I can think easily of 10 just off the top of my head alone. So we get lots of different species of grass. We get little flowers, perennial plants. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much rain, so most of our flowers have started to die off. We get these massive trees that you can see in this vast open area. So different species of trees. That is a silver cluster leaf up there. That is a type of tree that no animal really wants to eat. And at the moment, one of our favorite plants is these big trees, or are these big trees over there. And the reason that we love them so much is because they are producing delicious fruit for us to eat at the moment, called Marula fruit. So we get lots and lots of different plants. Now, of course, when you get different types of plants, you get different types of animals, because not every animal is designed to eat exactly the same food, just like not every person really likes to eat the same food, but animals are exactly the same. And they're designed to go, and some will eat, caterpillars will eat a certain bush, some animals will only eat the leaves off trees, so they're browsers. Something like a kudu, for example, which is a type of antelope, which is basically like the South African, it was the African equivalent of a deer. We get, what else? Things that only eat grass, things like zebra, buffalo really, white rhino. Those are so whenever you get a high diversity, in other words, you've got lots of different types of plants, lots of different types of grasses, then you get all sorts of extraordinary animals as well. And of course, if you get different insects that eat different plants, then you get different birds that eat different insects, and so on and so forth. So what it means is that we see all kinds of truly extraordinary things out here, and basically, essentially, all thanks to the plants that you see around us. That is what allows the creatures to live out here. And of course, the plants, just to take it one step down, is dependent on the soil. The type of soil that the plants grow on. And Jayla, very good question coming from you. You want to know, well, since we're in this vast open area looking at grasses, what is the main grass consumer here? It's difficult to pick exactly which creature probably consumes the most grass. If I had to guess, I'd say hippo. A hippopotamus eats lots and lots and lots and lots of grass, especially in places where there are lots of hippo, like where there are near big rivers that flow. So a hippo is a good example. Zebra, impala will eat grass, but generally not. They'll try and eat leaves and fruit and other stuff that they can find. Impala is the antelope that's the animal that we see the most of. There's over 100,000 impala in this particular reserve. Elephants at this time of year will also eat grass. But the sad thing is, we haven't had enough rain. At this time of year, we should have green grass. And in certain places that we can drive and that we can explore, in certain places, the grass is still green, but out here where we are now, very sadly, it is still brown. And that's just because we haven't had the right amount of rainfall. So everything is dependent on the weather. Now, Allenton School, you want to know what the fruit of this tree tastes like. I don't think I'm going to find one here, because I think the elephants are going to have eaten them all. And the impala and the baboons. It tastes quite almost sour, I would say. Quite a sour fruit. Sour, how do I explain it? Citrusy. I'm not eating that one though. That one's not ripe. And it seems as though the elephants have taken all of them. So it's quite a citrusy fruit. It's very, very juicy. And it is something that is full of vitamin C, which is, of course, very, very important. Now, it's not just about the predators that are on the ground. Some of the amazing things that we see are predators from the air. Let's go and have a look at the one that Tristan has found for you.
So we have some predators in the air too, you're right, Jamie. And this is called a brown snake eagle. And as the name suggests, this little bird or big raptor will hunt predominantly snakes. They do also hunt lizards and varying other little frogs and critters, but mostly what they go after is snakes, and they have very special legs to be able to do that. So if you look there, you can see that there's no feathers on the legs. The legs are bare, and they're armor plated, so that when they catch the snakes, they are able to protect themselves. So the snake is not able to inject the venom in on those armor-plated legs. So, Kaylin, we do see dangerous animals on our drives. Sometimes we'll see lions and leopards and elephants, and this afternoon we are looking for leopards. So we're here at a little waterhole where hopefully the leopards that they saw this morning might be. So we've just come to check around, but we got a bit distracted with our bird of prey. So we ended up seeing this beautiful eagle in the tree and thought we'd just have a look at him while we were looking for the leopards. I haven't seen any sign of the leopards yet. They haven't seen any tracks. We've only had tracks for some hyenas, but I'm sure they are somewhere nearby. Like I say, it's been very warm today, so hopefully they will be here. But when it's hot like this, all of the animals like to head to places where it's nice and shady. And Nigel, you want to know who's the top predator? Well, it depends on where you are and the numbers that they have. So in most ecosystems, you'll find that your top predator would be lions. So that because of how big they are and how ferocious they are, they're normally the top predator. But sometimes in some areas where you get more hyenas than lions, you'll find the hyenas are the top predator. So because of how many they are, they'll often dominate the lions, and they'll be able to chase the lions away from their carcasses. So I'm very surprised our eagle is still sitting there. Normally when you get quite close to them, they fly away, but this eagle is still sitting, watching. Oh, there we go. And look at those wings. You can hear in the background, there's a bird calling that's going wah, and that's called a grey go-away bird. And so that grey go-away bird saw this bird of prey flying and was nervous that it could be a bird that hunts other birds, and so it's an alarm call to everybody to warn them. Now I don't think this bird will fly too far. Well, Grayson. So Grayson, what a nice name you have. That is the name of my brother. So my brother's name is also Grayson, so easy to remember. And you want to know what the wingspan is for this brown snake eagle? Well, I'm not 100% sure on its exact one. I'll check it for you now. Its wingspan can get to 1.6 meters, so it can get quite big. Now in feet, I'm not 100% sure. Rebecca, how big is that in feet? 1.6 meters. We'll have a little check quickly. Rebecca will have a look and let me know exactly how big that is in feet, but it should be roughly, I would say, just over 5 foot, about 5.5 feet, I think, somewhere around there. Given that I'm 1.86 meters and I'm close to 6 foot, so I'd imagine it's 5 foot something, so quite big. But it's not the largest eagle we have here. So there we go, Rebecca's telling me 5.2 feet, Grayson. So not the biggest. We do have some of our birds that will go way beyond that, go over 7 or 8 feet. So very, very big birds out here. But this one, like I say, because it hunts snakes, and snakes generally are not very heavy. Well, not all the snakes. We do get pythons, which are very heavy, but the snakes that it goes after are normally quite small and slender and are easy to be able to pick up. Well, Alex, funny enough, there's not too many predators of the snake eagle when it's an adult like we just saw now, but when they are still chicks, they will have quite a few predators, including snakes. So in a twist of events, you'll find that the snake eagle, even though it eats snakes, the snakes will sometimes get them, particularly when they are chicks. You'll also find other birds of prey, mongoose, genets, which is like a small part of the mongoose family, well, related to the mongoose, but it looks a little bit different. And you'll find even things like leopards will go after the chicks when they're in the nest. So quite a number of predators in the nest. Once they get to this size, very, very few, because they're able to fly quite quickly and they've got really great eyesight. So they see predators coming from a long way away and then they just get out of there and fly away. And they're a bit too big for any of the other birds of prey to hunt them. So the other birds of prey tend to target mammals on the ground where they can fly in and grab them. Very seldom do birds of prey hunt on the wing, and particularly the really big ones. They won't battle with a bird like that. because it's going to be too dangerous and too heavy for them to carry up in the sky. So when they're adults, nobody, but as chicks, they will be hunted quite a lot. So I'm just having a look on the other side of the dam here for any tracks. I don't see any tracks for even elephants or buffalo. I was hoping that maybe there would be some of their tracks. But what we do have is a very pretty bird that has just landed on a tree in front of us. So now this is a very pretty bird. Look at those beautiful blues. It's called a European roller, and this is a migratory bird, so it's flying all the way from North Africa down to South Africa for our summer. And the reason why it's doing that is because now in summer we get a lot of rain, and so there's lots of insects around that this bird likes to eat. And so that's why they've come into this area to hunt all those insects. And as we start going into our winter, which will be sort of towards May, June, July, so these birds then will travel back up into North Africa because they know it will start raining up that way, and so the insect production will be better in North Africa. So they're following the insects as they go so that they can keep well fed and healthy. And you can see how it's looking around, trying to find any signs of insects. They often sit on these dead trees and then swoop down with and grab those insects. So while we admire our beautiful bird, we're going to cross to Taylor so she can say hello, and she's also got some rather large grey animals to show you.
Before I even say hello to all of you, I just want to show you these elephants because they're about to cross out and disappear off our traverse. We are currently sitting on Cheetah Plains at the moment, so they're crossing, or they're thinking about crossing, into Nkoro. Yes, good girl. Turn around. That is a good elephant. Well, there we go. Fantastic. So they're going to stay and hang around for hopefully a couple more minutes, and we're going to get a better view of them too. As they walk down the road, we'll have to loop around, but good afternoon, and my name is Taylor McCurdy, and I forgot my surname for a second, and on camera with me is David, and we're so happy to have you here this afternoon, and I can't believe that the first animal that we found are elephants, because that's what we've been looking for. And we've seen this herd a number of different times. Now, Nat.Geo, you were wondering what is the most endangered animal in Africa? Well, the most endangered animal in Africa to date is the Ethiopian wolf. One of the most endangered animals. There's a number of different ones, but out of the carnivores, the Ethiopian wolf is one problems with, unfortunately. Not too many of them left, and then you get the African wild dog, and then you can start going into rhinoceros, pangolin, things like that, but there are a number of them, and luckily for us, at one point elephants were also critically endangered, but at the moment their populations seem to have stabilized, which is wonderful. But that's not to say that there still isn't poaching that goes on. Look at this Ellie, look how beautiful she is, how she's feeding off of this Marula tree, and you can see that they've been feeding quite a large amount off of this tree. They've actually dwarfed it completely. See how they've made it small? It used to be a beautiful big tree, but from the elephants breaking all the branches and constantly feeding on it, it has now, of course, quite small. Sorry, I'm just having some interesting, I can hear your question. It's just very, very soft all of a sudden, but I'll sort that out in a moment. So sorry, Nat.Geo, I'm going to try and catch up to these elephants. So if you've also wondered what is the population of elephants in Africa? Sure, that's a hard one, but I reckon that just the elephants around here that we see, so on 8.5 million acres, it's a difficult one. They try and do game counts, so they try and go out and count all the various animals, but I'd probably put it at about maybe 20,000 elephants just in this area, if not a little bit more. In Africa, I don't know, probably 100,000 or so, somewhere around there. Ah, that is brilliant. Here we go. Fantastic. Here we go. Now my communication with Rebecca in Final Control is much better again. It seems to have sorted itself out. So I just want to get that name again. Ah, there we go, Leah. Now you're actually wondering how elephants keep themselves cool. Now as you see them walking, can you see her flapping her big ears? Look at that, she opens and closes them. And as she does that, as she's feeding along. There are lots of blood vessels in the back of her ears. There we go. Nice shot, Dave. You can see how she opens them, and you can see them there. So by opening and closing her ears, it's almost like if you flap your hands in front of your face, you create cool air. And that's exactly what happens. And that cool air will actually cool the blood down on the thinnest part of the skin and an elephant's body. And then that cool blood is then circulated throughout the entire body. But that's just one of the many ways that they cool themselves down. And what I'm hoping that we see is we see them go swimming. Now, hopefully we'll see some more ways that the elephant cools themselves down as you go along. They look like they have covered themselves in mud. Oh, this is what elephant dung looks like. Look at that. All marula fruits. That's very fresh. That's just happened now. There's even some urine on the ground. Hello. Look at all the flies, all the little insects coming down to feast upon the moisture. There we go, that's urine. Now, Alex, you're wondering if elephants always live in groups. Most of the time, unless you are a boy elephant. If you're a boy elephant, when you get to a certain age, so when you get to about 20 years old, somewhere between 16 and 20 years old, and they get pushed out, and then they'll live in sometimes small groups with other male elephants, other boy elephants, and then eventually when they reach about 30 years old or so, they are quite big and strong, and then they'll basically just live by themselves. We're going to keep following these elephants, and hopefully they're going to go and stay on our traverse and head to some water, and then I'll be able to show you some more ways that an elephant will cool itself down on a hot summer's day. But before they do that, we're going to go across back to the elegant antelope who is patrolling on foot this afternoon.
Travelling on foot, and we have stopped our travels towards the waterholes because, as I said earlier, like Tristan and Taylor, we're also focusing on which animals have gone to drink where. But the reason that I've stopped is we found a very interesting imprint in the sand. And one of the things that you learn to do when you're walking out here is to read the signs of the bush, kind of like reading a newspaper, because that tells you exactly what's been happening, whether it was an hour ago, 12 hours ago, or even a day ago. Animals leave behind footprints, they leave behind certain signs, and you can learn to read them like you can learn to read English, for example, or you can learn to read a language. Okay, maybe not quite as clearly, but it certainly gives you a really nice idea about what is happening or what has happened. And this is a particularly cool track. I do wish the sun would come out now, because I'm not sure how clearly you're going to see it. It was beautifully clear in the sun earlier. But the most fascinating part about this track, and I'm going to bend down to show you, is the swish here. And it is very, very clearly the landing point of a bird that clearly came tumbling out of the sky to try and catch something that was on the road. Perhaps it was a grasshopper, some kind of an insect maybe. But it's amazing. I find it fascinating that you can see the spread of the wings over here, the sweep of the feathers on either side, the sweep that way and the sweep a little bit on this side. It's not as clear as this side, so the bird obviously landed quite heavily towards the right hand side, and then it hopped a little bit to go and catch whatever it was after, because of course birds are ferocious hunters of things like insects. And what that means, if you're an insect, is that you have to evolve and think of different ways to protect yourself. One of the ways might be to hide away, for example, just like this particular insect is doing. He's been so obliging right up until now. There we go. Kaylin, you want to know if there are many insects here. Well, Kaylin, there you go. You have an answer to your question as our stick insect races away down my back. This is an insect that pretends to be a stick. And they're very, very good at keeping very, very still, which means that they camouflage themselves spectacularly. And stick insects are found almost all over the world because they're such a clever design for an insect. I don't know how on earth I'm going to get this one off now. I'm going to have to recruit some help. But this is now my special friend, the stick insect that has spent a great deal of time on my shirt. And that is how they disappear. And just to let you know, while we're on this bushwalk, we do have a gentleman with us called Herbie. Herbie is a fantastic guide and tracker. No, Herbie. Herbie's standing there. Now, Herbie's job is to help us track down things. He's got expert bush knowledge, and he is very, very good at keeping us safe, because a lot of the time I'm talking to you, I'm focusing on answering your questions, and I'm not necessarily constantly looking to see exactly what's going on around me because I've got the earpiece in my ear. So Herbie's there to walk a little bit ahead of us and make sure that we're not about to, say, step on the tail of a lion or perhaps bounce off the bottom of an elephant. All of those are things that we would really rather avoid doing. I'm trying to... Okay, I give up. I don't even think I can reach that part of my back now. It's now just there.
Come up your hair.
It is now it's in my hair. Okay. Well, I guess it'll have to live there for the rest of this bushwalk. Ilana, you want to know how many different types of trees that we get out here? Ilana, lots and lots, hundreds of different types of trees. We get some very common species, and then of course we get some rare species. And remember we spoke about soil types. Well, in different places you will get different types of trees. So up here we're on what we call a crest. We're on a sort of where the land rises. But a little bit further off to the east of me, directly to the east of me, is a dry river system that runs through the reserve. And there you're going to find different species of trees. Trees that need a bit more water maybe. Trees that need a bit of a different type of soil. So all in all, there are more trees than you would expect. Hundreds and hundreds of them. And of course, as you go throughout South Africa, you'll find more and more species of trees. If we go towards the west, there is a mountain range called the Drakensberg, and in the Drakensberg there is a forest, a misty forest, basically a rainforest essentially, with giant trees called yellowwoods. Now that's a tree that we absolutely wouldn't find here, down in the sort of the basin of the Lowveld. You're not going to find any yellowwoods here, but you will find trees like this tree, which is called an apple leaf. And an apple leaf is called an apple leaf because apparently people say that when you crunch the leaves, it sounds exactly like you're biting into a fresh green apple. So that's where that name comes from. And it's also known as the rain tree. So there's different names for different people. Now, Jaden, you want to know what the climate is here. Jaden, it is relatively temperate, which means that our winters are not too cold, but our summers can get very, very hot. So on a hot summer's day like today is only around about, 93, 95, somewhere around there. But it can get over 100 degrees Fahrenheit sometimes in summer. In winter, it doesn't really get that cold either. It sits around at its coldest about 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the early mornings, maybe, and then we'll go up to sit at around about 70 to 75 in the afternoons. So in the afternoon winter, we can be walking around with t-shirts on. And then we don't really have a spring or an autumn. Or in fact, we don't really have 4 seasons. We kind of have a rainy season, which is over our cold period, our winter period. We have our dry season and our wet season. And we should be in our wet season at the moment, but unfortunately, we just haven't had too much rain. Sorry, I've just seen something dashing across, but unfortunately it ran away. We're not going to get it. It was an Inyala racing. It's a type of antelope, but it saw us and it ran away. It was hiding behind a termite mound. I have a question for all of you. You have a question, Leah, about how long a walking stick can grow. Well, the walking stick, or the stick insect, as we call them, although that is now my new favorite name, and I'm never ever going to call them a stick insect again. They are now called walking sticks. A walking stick can get this big. So there are certain parts of the world where stick insects can get this large, which is about just over a foot. Out here in South Africa, in this part, probably about this big. I don't quite know what that is in inches, but give or take. That's how big a stick insect will get. Now I have a question for you. Where's the stick insect gone? Is it on the shoulder? It doesn't look like it's on the shoulder. Doesn't look like it's on the shoulder. Is the stick insect still there? You will have to tell me if the stick insect is still there. Or has it gone? Some of them can fly, you know. It might have vanished. Is it still on my head? Is it still there? Is it in my hair? That's a bit worrying. Perhaps we'll have to try and get it out. And Jalicia, you want to know if the walking sticks bite? Luckily not. The stick insects don't bite. They're not dangerous in any way. They're a completely harmless insect. All they want to do is hide away on certain types of plants and eat them. So they don't bite. I have never been hurt by a stick insect before. That's why they're one of my favorite insects to show you, just because it's such a perfect example of camouflage. And what they'll do, if they realize that they've been spotted, or perhaps it's a bit windy, is they'll rock a little bit. So they don't necessarily always stay completely still, like a chameleon. If they're trying to get somewhere and they don't want to be spotted, maybe they're out in the open, they don't want a hornbill like the one that landed in the road to spot them, then they'll rock backwards and forwards, trying to pretend to be a stick blowing in the wind. I guess that stick insect must be gone then. Now, Allinston, of course, if it did bite, that would be a very, very silly thing to put on my shoulder. You want to know what the most... Sorry. Hold up. Can you hold on for 1 second, Allinston? There is a snake track going across the road. There is a snake track that is zigzagging across the road here. There it goes. I nearly stepped all over it. And this snake, I can tell you immediately, is going the way your camera is going, the way the camera is showing you. So it's gone straight towards that bush. And I bet you it's still in there somewhere. Who knows? Maybe it's worth having a look around. So this could be any snake. It's hard to tell from this track. We know it's not a puff adder. We know it's not a python. Those are the only two snakes I can rule out because of the way that they move in a straight line. But this snake is moving like this. See? Okay, not quite like that. Definitely in a much more perfect way than me. But you can see how it's pushed the sand up to the side. And that's because it's going this way. So you can imagine the snake pushing here, pushing there, and pushing there. So that's how it propels itself forward. So that snake has gone straight towards that bush. And you know what? I'm actually quite glad it's gone straight towards that bush, because that way is the house that I live in. And I would really prefer that it hadn't gone into my house. Now, you want to know about the most dangerous encounter I've had on foot. Generally, it's important to remember that the animals don't want to attack you. They don't want to hurt you. The only reason that they might is because if you've trapped them in some way or you've scared them in some way. Probably the most dangerous encounter I've had was with a black rhino that stopped here, away from us. She came running out of the bush only because she got a fright. She thought we were following her. She tried to circle us to get to where she could smell us, because rhino can't see very well. And basically what happened was we walked into her again and she got a fright and she came running at us. So she stopped less than 6 feet away from us. That was a dangerous one. I've had a few elephant encounters. I've been growled at by lions a few times, but generally lions are not too bad on foot. They're not too scary on foot. I've had a leopard explode out of the bushes next to me because it stayed very still, like this antelope's doing over there. Look at that. Can you see it there, Viam? 2 antelope. There we go. A herd of antelope. Lots of antelope, of course, live in herds or in groups, and it's safe living in a family. But Allington, you want to know, do we find that there are insects live in a family? Certain types, yes. Stick insects, no. Although I love the idea of a family of walking sticks. Unfortunately, they live all on their own, unless they're mating, or actually only if they're mating, because they don't even look after their babies once they've laid their eggs. But there's something that lives in a family, something that you see, something that you get where you are. There's actually two different things that I'm thinking of specifically. One is termites, the other is ants. And we have them here as well. The termites are responsible for building these enormous termite mounds, these big structures that we love to climb on to have a look and see what's going on around us. So we love a good termite mound. Termites live in colonies, which is essentially one really massive family with thousands and thousands and thousands of termites. Their Thanksgiving dinners must be a riot. No, they have lots and lots of different members of their colony. Ants, certain species of spiders out here. Occasionally you get lots of things gathering together, like a swarm of locusts. But that's not really a family because they're not connected to each other. They're just gathering around a food source. Now, there are lots of fascinating excuse me, insects out here, but some of the exciting things are also very big. Let's go and have a look at tailors.
It seems as though our elephants have, if not tripled, quadrupled now. Look at that. We went from looking at 3 elephants, and we must have about 10 or 15 of them now. Isn't this cool? And I think the 3 that we had are still on their way here, and I think that they look like they were quite keen to have a swim. Hello, girl. I'm just watching this Ellie that's coming up to us. Hello, girl. That's okay. It's okay, big girl. She's just talking to us. You maybe have heard the rumble. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to give her a bit of room, because I think that's what she's asking me to do. It's okay, girl. I'll go back for you. No problem. She just came over. It's okay. And what we're going to do now is when the elephants tell us that they're a little bit unhappy with us, we respect them by giving them a little bit of space. There we go. Maybe she just didn't like the way that I parked and she thought that I could position my vehicle a little bit better. Imari, now you're wondering what the lifespan of an elephant is, and this one that you're looking at over here, this is an old girl. She looks like she's been around for quite some time, and I'm sure you just saw the vehicle, the other car with all the guests who are visiting South Africa and all these wonderful animals. So they can live to about 70 years. I wouldn't say too much more than that. And it's so interesting that an elephant's age is determined. I'm just watching her again. It's okay, big girl. I'll get to your question now. Relax, 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 relax. It's okay. She's just showing very, very subtle signs that she's not too comfortable with us. The way she keeps just looking at us, but she's just passing us now, which is good. But a moment ago, she had her tail raised away from her body, which can be a slight... Can you hear that? See how she's rumbling? So she's communicating with the rest of the herd. And that's how they talk. They talk via infrasounds. So most of the way that they communicate is done through vibrations through the ground that we can't even hear or even feel. But that one that she's just done now is a very common way. And I think they're just deciding where they're going to go this afternoon. See how she's smelling the air? But I reckon that she could be the matriarch, so the leader of the herd. And normally they're a little bit cautious just to keep an eye on everybody. What I'm going to do now, there's our friends. They're just popping up over here. But I'm going to just turn the vehicle actually. And we're going to watch her have a drink from this side. There we go. I think that's what she wanted to do. I think that maybe we're just in her way a little bit. Look at this beautiful dam, her little one running up next to her. Now, I believe that all of you from Allenton School are wondering, how much does an elephant weigh? Well, a big girl, like the one we're looking at, she probably weighs about, I'd say about 8,500 pounds or so. So around about 4,000 kilos, maybe even 4,500 kilos. So it's probably a bit more, maybe closer to 9,000 pounds. So quite a lot. And that little one probably weighs about 400 or 500 pounds. Hello, little one. Not old enough yet to be wandering away from mom. And you can see that that little elephant is still struggling to use its trunk. Did you see that? Not quite able to squirt all the water in its mouth, especially if you watch how its mother is quite precise with its trunk. Now, Charlie, you're wondering if all elephants have tusks. A fact, most of them do, but every now and then it's quite common with female elephants to be born without tusks. It's a genetic mutation, but not all the time. Sometimes they've got one, but down where I'm from, on the southeast coast of South Africa, in a province called, or a state called the Eastern Cape, it was actually quite common to see elephants without tusks there. But the boy tusks, the male's tusks, get much bigger, much longer and thicker, whereas you can see the female's tusks are a little bit more slender. They can also get quite long, but not normally as big as the male's tusks. You can see that little one starting to get nice big tusks now. It almost looks like they're old though, don't you think, the way that they've covered themselves in the grey sand. So after a mud bath, and remember Leo was asking earlier, how do elephants keep themselves cool? And I mentioned to you that one of the ways is by flapping their ears. But you can see that they've also covered themselves with mud. That's another way to keep themselves cool. And even to splash some refreshing cold water over your body. That will keep you nice and cool too. And then, like you saw, they'll dust themselves with the sand. They might still do that. Hello, girl. Lovely girl. She settled down nicely now, which is good. I think we were just sitting in the pathway that she wanted to walk. Sorry about that, madam. Now, Ellie, you were wondering, how do elephants, I think I heard this correctly, survive with physical... not Ellie. And you were wondering, how do elephants survive with physical adaptations? So if an elephant, say, doesn't have any tusks, in this area it will actually be all right. It should be okay, because there's normally lots and lots of food. There's lots of grass, there's lots of leaves, there's fruit. There's a variety of things that she can eat. But the problem comes in is that, say, an elephant was living in the desert, where it's quite common that elephants will have to dig for water. So they'll go into the riverbeds and they will dig right down. It seems as though all our elephants are now disappeared behind us. And if you haven't got any tusks, it can make it very, very difficult, of course, to dig for food, to dig for the bulbs that are underneath the ground, and of course for water too. But they manage. They're all right. We've seen so many elephants that unfortunately have lost the tip of their trunks, which is very sad, most of them due to snares. So it's bits of wire where people have illegally put these traps out in the bush to try and catch some dinner, so smaller animals. But then these elephants will sometimes unfortunately find that, and then they'll lose their trunk. But they survive. They make do. They are so incredible and so tough and strong. They're able to survive a lot of things out here. But it seems as though, like I said, our elephants have gone into the bushes. We'll see if we can catch up with them, because I'm enjoying the elephants. I don't know about you. But we're going to go across now to Tristan, who has got a cat lying in the shade.
We do indeed, Taylor. It gave us a bit of a runaround. We've been checking all over here, looking for any signs of him, and luckily we've managed to find him, and just where we thought he would be, in the shade, close to some sort of water. So if you have a look, there's the water right there. So he's got himself the perfect place to lie down. He's found himself a nice shady tree close to the water. There's a nice breeze blowing here, so very, very, very comfortable for where he is. But you can see he's a very hot cat, lots and lots of panting going on. And if you look at his tummy's quite swollen too. So he obviously had a nice meal yesterday or last night, and that's why he's breathing so fast. Saloni, well, I think my favorite part of being in safari is probably spending time with the animals. It's just so nice to be out here and to be able to spend time with animals, particularly things like leopard, which are really sort of shy, reclusive animals and not that much known about them. So to spend long periods of time watching them and getting a look into their life is really quite something that is very, very special to all of us. So I think that's my favorite part. And then also just being out in the open, so being in the sunshine and the fresh air all day is really, 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 really very, very, very nice. So I think that's my favorite part. I think it'll be different for everybody, but for me it's the time with the animals and being out in the open and in the sunshine. But that is one very hot cat. You can see he's panting heavily, so he's very warm. And you can actually see on his little chin there that it's all muddy, so he's obviously had a drink earlier, and that's where he's got a bit of mud from where he had his drink. And you can see the fur is actually still wet, so I would imagine that he drank not too long ago. Given that it's so warm and the breeze is blowing, that will dry quite fast, so I would imagine he had a drink just now and has come and lay down. Where he is lying at the moment, the grass has been depressed and has been flattened quite a bit, so I think his sister must be somewhere close by as well. I haven't seen her yet, but I think that his sister must be here lying around. I would imagine that the two of them came to this waterhole together, and when we drove, we actually came past here a little bit earlier, and there was a little family of warthogs that was close by, and those little warthogs ran away, unfortunately for us, but maybe the little female heard those warthogs running away and she went to go and investigate, and that's why we can't see her. But I would imagine she's not too far away. If he's got a full belly like that, then she probably had something to eat last night as well, and will also be quite tired and quite full. He's going to be one lazy cat in this heat. He's not going to move too much at all. He's going to wait until it gets a little bit cooler, because otherwise he's going to expend far too much heat and just be really, really, really hot. When it gets cooler, it will be much easier for him to move around and find food. Alright, so unfortunately it's that time now where we have to say goodbye to the schools that have joined us this afternoon. It's been so good to have you. We've really enjoyed having you on board, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. It was really nice to have the elephants and the leopard with us. And so from the girls and myself, Taylor, Jamie, we'd just like to say thank you, and we'll see you hopefully soon. So he's still fast asleep. I'm sure he's not going to move too much this afternoon at all. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be one of those lazy afternoons for little Hosana. It seems like he had quite a busy evening with that belly, and like I say, quite a busy morning as well. From what I saw that Brent had, it seems that they were up and down the trees and had a good morning playing around. Also, when we were driving here, I saw some of the tracks from last night, and you can see where they were bouncing up and down the road and chasing one another and sniffing the grass and going crazy. So it's perfect for him to have a good afternoon nap. I'm sure his sister will be doing the same. Now, there's no sign of Marula coming back. I looked very carefully. We didn't see any tracks. I did quite a big loop around them while we were looking for any signs of them, and there's no signs of Marula coming back this way. So wherever she is, maybe she's done the same as them, has just found somewhere to have a little rest before she decides to come back this evening, or maybe carry on hunting. But with a belly like that, I'm hoping she also got some food. It's going to become harder and harder for her these days. She's got this massive male that is here, and he's eating so much. So he's going to be eating the vast majority of what she's catching, and then she's got little Shongile eating as well. So there's not going to be too much left over for her. So I would imagine hunting-wise, she's going to be doing a lot more hunting than she normally does, just to be able to sustain all three of them. Well, hello Vic, and welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us, and I hope you are enjoying it. And you want to know if there's anything wrong with this leopard. No, there's nothing wrong with this leopard. He's just very, very full and very, very hot. It's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 34 degrees Celsius today, so it is really, really hot. And for a leopard who's covered in fur, it is very, very warm. That, coupled with the fact that he's got a very full belly, he's going to be struggling a little bit with the heat, and so that's why he's found himself a nice place just to have a nice nap. And that fast breathing that you're seeing is just a way of him cooling down. Unfortunately, when they have this fur coat and in this heat, they get very, very hot, and much like something like a dog or a domestic cat, as they get warm, they need to start panting to be able to get rid of that excess heat. And so that's why he's breathing fast at the moment, but there's nothing wrong with him. He's a very healthy individual, and is actually a really pretty young boy. Just look at all those spots. He's very, very beautiful, this cat. You can see how those spots actually work, and that right-hand side in terms of camouflage. When it's behind the grass, it's actually a little bit harder to make out the spots. They blend in a lot better than when he's out in the open. So the only reason he's lying out in the open at the moment is because he's squashed all the grass from rolling around there during the day. So all that grass has been flattened completely, and as soon as he gets into the long grass, you'll find that he'll be very warm. So I don't know if you can see, there's a little bird that's coming down to drink. So we have got our bird challenge running. So just to the right there, it looks like a little cinnamon-breasted bunting. So just there we go, Brian, that way. So we've got to keep adding our birds to be able to keep going. So indeed, we've got a cinnamon-breasted bunting. So you can see why it's called a cinnamon-breasted bunting, with that little cinnamon chest. Oh, it's just bounding around. And so it'll also be coming for water, given that it's warm. You're going to find lots of birds coming here. There was some warthogs in the vicinity earlier, so I'm sure everybody's looking for a bit of moisture in this heat just to slacken that thirst. Isn't that pretty? Alright, so we're going to carry on with Hosana for a little bit. I might just have a little look around and see if there's any sign of Shongile, and see if maybe she's lying around here somewhere as well. I would imagine that she'll be somewhere close by. And while we do that, we're going to go back to Taylor and see how she's doing with the elephants.
Sorry, Tristan, the elephants disappeared, but hopefully we'll find them again. But I have another mammal. A zebra. Well, not just one zebra, a couple of zebras. And I also just want to comment, I completely forgot that we were having a bird challenge, so we're going to have to start next month, I think. Maybe March will be the one where I'll start tallying down what birds I've seen. But I completely forgot about that. Now, of course, we're sitting with the zebra. We're on Cheetah Plains. And it is a beautiful afternoon. It's getting nice and cool. I'm really appreciating the odd clouds that come past. You can see there's some small ones there. Hi, zebbies. And it's so weird how they've all separated into little smaller groups. You see that, David? You've got 2 there, and then you've got another 2 in the middle, and then you've got 3 or 4 down on the right as well. But they're all one herd. It seems as though they're all just enjoying. They've got their own little cliques, I suppose. Those 3 over there, and there's 4, are all friends, closer friends. No, I'm just teasing. That's, of course, not what's probably happened here. But we find that that's 2 moms over there with their juveniles from last year. I think that's exactly what we're looking at. Hello, guys. But very peaceful, standing with their bums facing the sun, barring one of them. One's got their head towards the sun. And you can see it's actually quite a clever tactic. You might even see it better, David, on those 2 in the middle, where you can see how their heads are now in the shade. You see that? So as they've got their bums pointed towards the sun, they've managed to shade themselves even while standing out in the middle of the open, which is a clever idea. Because I think if I was a zebra, I'd probably do the same thing. I wouldn't want the sun to be glaring on my face. It would be very uncomfortable. And then they're still swatting the flies as they go along. I can't believe how much greener it is here on Cheetah Plains. Djuma has got very, very dry over the last couple of weeks, especially those big open plains quarantine just in front of the DRC. It's quite evident. It's almost yellow now. Whereas out here, it's still all right. The grass hasn't taken too much damage just yet. Hello, little one. Also, it's amazing how they all learn from the adults too. Seeing and then just copying them. But guys, there's so many trees for you, not eating. If I was them, I'd probably go and stand in one of these thickets, because the temperature under the shade of the tree will easily be a couple of degrees cooler than standing out in the middle of a plain in the glaring sun. And like I said, the clouds come over every now and then, and it's beautiful. But while the clouds are smaller and sort of moving in between the sun at the moment, it's a little bit unpleasant. I would imagine these zebra must be exceptionally hot. But I think that they adapt to the heat much better than what we do. Hey? David, do you think we should go and find those elephants? So what we're going to do now is we're going to say goodbye to these zebras. We're going to see if we can quickly find those elephants. And of course my name is Taylor McCurdy, just in case you are wondering who I am. And on camera with me is David. Maybe one day we'll get to see him. Hey David? Maybe. But we're going to go and of course try and find these elephants again. And if you have just joined us, welcome. We've seen quite a few things so far. We had elephants earlier, we had them drinking, which was quite nice, with them walking down the road. And then Tristan's had leopards, he's had Hosana. Jamie's had all sorts of interesting things. And if you'd like to get hold of us or send in any questions, you can hashtag Safari Live. Oh no, Hornbill, on Twitter, or questions at WildEarthTV. Actually, I'm going to go up a bit further. Just behind this African wattle are two yellow-billed hornbills. There's actually a whole lot of them around. Oh my goodness, there's an entire flock. Let's see what they're chatting about. Don't fly away, guys. We want to look at you. We're sitting in this bush willow now. There they are. There's about 4 of them. I actually saw quite a few up ahead as well. There must be a hornbill meeting going on here. But like I said, a yellow-billed hornbill, and you can see how hot it is, as these poor hornbills have got their beaks agape, trying to cool themselves down. But that's a good spot in the shady tree there. I think that's much better than, like I said, than being out in the open. And I wonder, they were feeding on something. So it must have been some insect of sort. There's lots of butterflies around, as you've been seeing. Oh, there they are. They're still bouncing around in the tree. I can hear one starting to talk in the distance. You can see that one's listening. Oh, it's actually got something in its mouth. Hey, David. What is that? What are you eating? Ah, that's rude. It did have something in its mouth. Maybe it was a butterfly. I'm not sure, but they've gone now. Maybe some termites, maybe some harvester termites working very hard, because that's one of their favorite things to eat, and it's probably one of my favorite things to watch, is the precision as those hornbills pick up such a small insect and whoops, throw it up and sort of catch it in your mouth. But we're going to keep searching. We're almost at the big plains now. We're going to have a look and see if there are any cheetah brothers around, maybe some buffalo, all the rest of those elephants, and we'll check Buffalo Dam a little bit later. But Jamie's still out and about, walking around, of course, and she's somehow managed to break a branch.
What can I say, Taylor? It's just my massive bulk has destroyed this Marula tree branch. I just climbed up into it and it just really couldn't quite hold my enormous body size. On that note, what I wanted to actually, why I'm sitting on this Marula branch, apart from the obvious, the fact that it's broken, is if you cast your mind back, and let me try not to fall out of this Marula branch while I'm sitting here. If you cast your mind back to 2 weeks ago, Monday morning 2 weeks ago, during our television show, which would have been Sunday evening for those of you in the North Americas or the South Americas, we had a TV show. Brent was with Wild Dogs, Viv and myself were with the royal family. Hosana was sitting at the pump house and Shongile was spread-eagled in a Marula tree. Karula was in this tree. And a lot of those screenshots that you got were from her on this branch, this exact branch that I'm sitting on now. Now, not that I'm accusing Karula of anything. I don't think her massive bulk pulled this branch down either. It is very interesting because it just goes to show how quickly, well, the sort of the time frame that it happened, and also just the massive strength of something that needs to snap, fully snap. Not just tear off a branch or two, fully snap a massive limb of a Marula tree. I mean, to give you an idea of how thick this branch is, I basically, okay, it's not quite that I can't get my arms around it, but it is really, really large. And it just goes to show how tremendously powerful an elephant is when they pull over something like this. And it's been kind of fed on, but not really. The problem with this, of course, is that once this happens, or when a Marula tree's top bark layer gets stripped away, because it's such soft wood, I'm contradicting myself now because I'm talking about the amazing strength of the tree and now I'm talking about softwood. It is softwood comparatively. It doesn't mean it's not a feat of strength to snap a massive limb. But that means that it gets exposed to termites and to wood borers. It's like a break in your skin and giving rise to infection. It's the same sort of thing. The interesting thing about when a leopard climbs up a limb like this, and I thought about climbing all the way up there and then decided that actually if it falls down I'm going to be in serious trouble because it's going to roll, and no matter how extraordinary my jumping skills, somehow I don't think I would have any success in jumping out of its way, and I really would rather not. But when a leopard climbs up a limb like this, there's often evidence of it. And you can actually see when it's been freshly climbed up by an elephant on a Marula tree. by an elephant. The elephants aren't climbing up marula trees. I mean a leopard. When it's been climbed up by a leopard. Did I say leopard or elephants? You know what I mean. When a leopard climbs up it. I did say elephant, didn't I? Just for new viewers, elephants do not climb trees. My mistake. Don't think that needed clarifying. When a leopard climbs a tree, what actually often happens, this isn't such a good example because it's been exposed to the sun. There we go. What often happens is these bits of bark that are so characteristic of a marula tree get pulled off by their claws, and you're left with a mark like this. And that, when on a non-dead limb, because of course this limb is now dead, it's actually very clear, very fresh, that you can see those scar marks. So it's one of the other things we don't often talk about when it comes to tracking. And these ones here, along here, were not me. Those were probably Marula when she was scrabbling around up here. I don't know if you can see them there, it's a bit high. But that was probably Marula. So there you go. Marula's beautiful picturesque television limb is no more. Also gives an idea as to height, because this limb would have been sitting right up. Now, David, you want to know if this would kill the tree. The answer is potentially. Probably not. Of course, it's still got plenty of leaf cover. It's still got the remaining half. So it could well survive, and marula trees can be quite, what's the word I'm looking for, resilient in the face of an attempt like this to dismember it. Dismember is maybe not the best word. But then what I mentioned about the wood borers and the termites, that could potentially kill the tree if it gets unlucky, essentially, and if those wood borers and termites get in there. So potentially, David, it could kill the tree. Speaking of leopards and trees, I don't know if Hosana is on the ground or in a tree. Let's go and find out.
No, he's still on the ground, Jamie. Unfortunately, we were hoping to find a leopard sprawled on the tree like you were just now. So we went looking around for Shungile. We checked all the big trees around here, all the shady little spots and nooks that we could find. But alas, no sign of her. There is quite a bit of long grass around, so maybe she's hiding in one of those long grass areas, and we just drove past her without seeing her. But I didn't see anything. I haven't seen any tracks. And looking around the edge of this waterhole, it only looks like just tracks for him where he drank. I don't see any tracks for her, but it's possible she drank on a harder section and I just can't see. But you can see in the mud there where he was drinking, and he kind of walked along to that shady area. Now he's really just trying to avoid the heat as much as possible. Oh, that's very nice. Little spotted joker. So that spotted joker is getting all the moisture from the mud. Nice spot, Brian. Very good. So that's why it's there. It's landed on that cool mud and is just absorbing the moisture through the mud. It'll use that long proboscis that you see extending there, and it will be sucking up a little bit of water and staying hydrated as well. Like I was saying just now with the cinnamon-breasted bunting, is these little water holes will be a hive of activity for insects and birds, and then the mammals alike. You'll find that leopards like to drink from these kind of water holes because of the lack of crocodiles. Very seldom would you find a crocodile in a waterhole of this size, especially not ones the size of Boris and Vladimir, our two crocodiles that we see quite regularly. The two Russian mafia that Brent likes to name. And so this would be really, really safe for a young cat like this to come and drink. And so you'll find that they like to use this a lot. Things like warthogs would also use it, buffalo to wallow. And so quite a multitude of species are going to come down. And I was saying to Brian just now, if we actually just sit here, we might get quite a few interesting things coming down. Lots of birds, I would imagine. And sometimes if you sit quietly, you get all those rarer birds and those little bit more skittish birds like the waxbills and your firefinches that will come to a waterhole like this. And they won't have seen that leopard. That leopard's really quite well camouflaged, particularly if they're coming from the other side. In fact, we drove right past the leopard until we got a little bit past it and he popped his head up and then Brian saw him. So it's quite sheltered in there, and so you're going to find that the birds are going to battle to see him, and they'll come down and drink, and you'll see it's going to be quite a hive of activity. So, Reese, the black spots on the legs being larger, it's just that those spots haven't got sort of grown out, and so they're still quite solid, and that's why they look more pronounced and bigger. As this leopard grows, so they start to rosette out and become almost that popcorn shape and break up a little bit. And so there's no real reason for it. You probably find also the camouflage pattern of this leopard, it needs to rely on camouflage on the flanks and on the backside. The legs themselves are going to be in the grass and are going to be very well hidden, so it doesn't need to be as broken apart and as camouflaged as what the top sections are and the back area and the shoulders, because that's really what's going to be sticking out and what the prey animal is going to look for. So that's the reason. As those spots go up the body, you'll see they start to open out and just help with the camouflage a little bit better. But you can still see he's young, his ears are still quite large and he's growing into them still. He's got such a typical face for the Marula boys. All the boys that I've seen her have, they all look very similar. They kind of have that exact same look about them. Induna, Mishu, Shivambalan, they all look quite similar. So he's got those same kind of features, and eventually the ears will look a little bit smaller as he grows into it. NTix Video, welcome. Nice to have you on board. I hope you are enjoying the show so far. And you would like to know at what age do they leave the mother? Sorry about that, just broke up a little bit. So these youngsters will probably leave their mother at about anywhere between 14 months and 2 years. So they've just turned a year old. They're about a year and a week old now. So they are still with mom, and you'll find normally as they get towards sort of 14 months, 2 years is when she starts to chase them away. Also, this male here, as he gets bigger, so the dominant males in this area start to see this young male that's starting to come into the prime of his life, and they'll know that he'll be a threat, and so they'll put pressure on him as well. So he's going to get chased way out of this area, and he's going to end up very far away, whereas the young female, his sister, won't get nearly as much pressure from the males. Ultimately, they know she's going to be a mating right at a later stage, and so you'll find that she'll end up probably staying in this area for a lot longer. As long as she shifts away from her mom, then generally they often have a territory that's very close to where their mother's is or was, and they settle in that area. So probably I would say within the next 6 to 8 months we're going to find these two being pushed out and leaving the area. It's dependent on each female. I've seen leopard cubs being left as early as 10 months and as late as 3.5 years. It was actually quite interesting. I was working in an area just south of us, and we had a female leopard who had a young male, and that young male refused to leave his mom. He just stayed on. Wherever she went, he would follow, and he ended up staying until he was 3.5 years, and she actually ended up breeding between that. So she had her next set of cubs, and so at one stage we had her with this 3.5-year-old brute of a male who was way bigger than she was, and then she had 2 1-year-old males as well. So this poor female was feeding these 3 monsters, all that were bigger than what she was, and she was having to provide an impala pretty much for the big male, and then an impala for the 2 smaller boys, and then she would have to try and find food for herself. So she had a really tough time. So there's no real rule, but in general you would find a situation where they would probably try go out before 2 years. So Elaine, these 2 cubs, I mean, because they're young and they are quite mischievous, they do hunt and chase things all day long. So you'll find that, let's say a tortoise came wandering down here, or a monitor lizard, or something that piqued their interest, you'd find they'd go and investigate and play around. And I suppose hunt is not the word, it's more curiosity, that they are exploring their environment and trying to see what's going on with everything that is around here. And so yes, they're chasing things every day, every morning and afternoon. When it cools down, they will get a little bit active and go and look around for things and chase lizards up trees and chase birds. We've had lots of sightings of Hosana and Shongile chasing little francolins and guinea fowl, but hunting not so much. And the thing is, with this curiosity and this play that they do, is it's going to teach them ways to hunt later in life. So even though it might look completely ridiculous when they chase a bird from an open area, they're going to learn a valuable lesson. They're going to know that, okay, next time I've got to hide if I want to try and catch it. And so it's all part of training for them, and eventually they'll be able to hunt quite effectively. So I suppose all those little animals provide important experience for them. And you also find that every now and then they will catch them, and so they can get a bit of nutrition, especially on days when mom hasn't provided food. A day like today where he's got a really full belly and he's had a good meal last night, he's not going to be too concerned about eating. But when he hasn't had food, all those little meals are still nutrition and just still keep getting him the nutrients that he needs to survive. But that is one flat tired cat. I think it's just far too warm for him this afternoon. So we're still going to stay with him for a little bit longer. Like I say, I'm hoping Shongila is going to arrive, and while we do that, I believe Jamie's found a water pan of her own to cool down in.
I have found a water pan all of my own, inhabited only, I think, by terrapins. Sorry, I was just checking that wasn't Boris the crocodile. I mean, it seemed unlikely that it was Boris the crocodile, but having had so many discussions recently about the fact that crocodiles move everywhere, that I decided that I would rather not get eaten by Boris the crocodile. Jackie J, you want to know if there's any news on Boris the crocodile? Somebody said, Vim, was it you who told me that he crossed north?
Me and Taylor found his tracks going over.
Okay, there we go. So VM says that he and Taylor found its tracks going north into Buffelshoek. So across from Buffelshoek Dam and straight up to the north into a neighbouring property that we can't traverse on. So I'm assuming Boris is well and in good health. I shall pass on your greetings if I hear of anyone that's happened to see him. But other than that, no other evidence of Boris the crocodile. Famous last words. The next thing he's going to come launching out of the water at me. I don't actually think this waterhole is deep enough to hide him. But again, one never really wants to test that theory. And here we go. Unsuccessful foam nest. I think unsuccessful. It's gone very, very hard. And the reason I say unsuccessful is because if those poor tadpoles hatch now, they're not going to drop into any water. They are going to miss out on the pan completely. Shame. Poor things. It's a risky decision, because if you're a foam nest frog, this bit's still soft. If you're a foam nest frog, you want to lay your eggs where there aren't any fish, because fish, of course, eat tadpoles. So, would you be quiet? I'm trying to talk. Thank you. Magpie shrike. Just by the way, that's the texture of the substance. You want to build your not necessarily nest, you want to lay your eggs where there aren't any fish, because fish will definitely eat tadpole eggs and they will definitely eat tadpoles. But then you also want to try and lay them somewhere where there's a balance, so somewhere where that's going to have enough water for them when they are ready to hatch and they're ready to start plopping down and swimming. Sorry. Just hear an elephant. Just trying to work out how far away he is from me. I think quite far. Just heard a branch crack. Anyway, so you want to try and drop it in a puddle that's still around. And unfortunately, this foam nest frog didn't get the balance right, because by the time those eggs would have been ready to hatch, the pan had dried up and there was nowhere really for them to swim. It's been I have to say, it's been such a fascinating process watching James's tadpoles, and I keep wanting to call them something else, but James's tadpoles, and the way that he's been caring for them in the most unbelievable manner. He looks after them so carefully, makes sure he oxygenates the water a little bit. It's been intriguing to witness, but it's also been really fascinating watching their legs grow. And I can't help but imagine the existential crisis a tadpole must have. There's all of a sudden it can't breathe underwater, and now it needs to crawl out onto the surface of the land because it's got lungs. Must be very confusing. Jamie from Texas. Do we share a name, Jamie? Is it spelled like mine, or is it J-A-I? It is spelt like mine, apparently. You want to know which birds are calling. It's the bird I told to go away, which was very unfair of me. I'm lifting up my hat for the microphone so you can pick it up. It's a beautiful call. called a magpie shrike. And it's the ones that we've been seeing lots of babies of recently. Seems to be their sort of peak breeding season, so that's the whistling sound you're hearing. Beautiful. I'm trying to hold my microphone because my microphone sits up there. If I hold my microphone up towards it. So that's the bird that was calling that I told to go away, or to be quiet because I was talking, which was very rude of me. But that's a particularly lovely bird. Right, what else does this pan have to offer us in terms of fascinating, intriguing things? We are, by the way, going to go and help look for the lions, but I want to just double check that there's nothing happening around this pan, and I don't want to go tracking lions just yet, chatting away to you without first knowing which direction they've gone into, because I've just, after waiting so long for the Nkumas to be back, the last thing I want to do is scare them away. So I'm going to just hang around the pan until we have an opportunity to go relatively quietly. So let me see what I can find for you. Now, Mary, you want to know if the water there is dangerous. Well, Steph survived so far, Mary. I would filter it before you drink it, ideally boil it. I wouldn't really want to drink this water just because there is a significant amount of fecal matter in it. And especially dung from things like buffalo, they quite like to go and wallow and then deposit their dung in the water hole that they're wallowing in. So I wouldn't stick my face in and have a good long drink. Steph is much braver than I am. He's been... Strange bubbles just came up to the surface. Must have been a terrapin, but maybe a fish. It's possible. There could still be fish in this pan. There's bubbles there. Here. I'm curious to know what that is, bubbling away. Steph is definitely much braver than myself. He filters it through socks. He drinks it in all sorts of ways. I'm not sure I would be thus inclined. So Steph is definitely more courageous. Dangerous, absolutely, in terms of the fact that it could be hiding a crocodile. It could also be hiding... It's not, because it's not deep enough, but water could be hiding a hippopotamus or something like that. Otherwise, not too much in the way of danger. I'd quite happily wade through here. Green Eyes says she would not want to be in this water. Yuck. Agreed. I don't want to be in this water either. I think it would be... it's quite smelly. I guess when you're desperate and you're hot and you don't have an option, I might get in it, but I happen to know there's a perfectly good swimming pool waiting for me back at home. So agreed, I would not be getting into that water. This is yucky. Don't you agree, Viam? It also always astounded... I was still amazed at FW's attempts to climbing into the water pan and having a roll around in the water holes. It is truly extraordinary to me. So yes, agreed, yuck, I wouldn't want to get into that water either. I certainly wouldn't want to drink it. But needs will as needs must. So if you have to, you have to. Nothing. Now, James, you want to know if foam nest tree frogs have a preference to which trees... Ooh, it was much bendier than I expected it to be. Have a preference as to which tree they build their foam nests in. Generally, you'll find it in things... This is going to sound really silly, but let me try and explain what I mean. You often get certain types of trees that grow around around water holes or around pans like this. So you'll often find things like buffalo thorns. So they like buffalo thorns. They do like gori bushes as well. I think anything with quite a dense branch structure, because the foam itself has to cling on in several points of sort of application. And the way that they produce it is by frothing it up with their legs when they're mating. So obviously the fertilization is external in frogs rather than internal as it is in mammals. So as she lays her eggs and he deposits his sperm on top of them, they froth it together. They produce a substance that creates the sticky, foamy nest stuff, and it's very similar in texture to, you know, that building foam, that sort of ceiling foam that you can utilize to waterproof certain cracks in your walls or whatever you might happen to use it for. That's what it feels like. It feels very, very similar to that. So that is the way in which the eggs are produced. No, tadpoles are produced. Sorry, I'm distracted by Herbie, who's telling me that they got that way. Okay. Let us... Where's your last track? Is it that side? Okay, cool. Alright. We're just going to go and have a look at a lion track quickly, and then we'll... Yeah. Earlier on, or about 2 seconds ago, I was going to make my way towards that lion track, but Roshni, you want to know if those pans are artificially created? No, not at all. Those pans are entirely natural. So what will happen is it'll just be a natural low point, particularly in certain types of soil, particularly where there is a seep line and a natural basic flow of the water moving through the soil. They'll gather there in a puddle, and then something will come along like a warthog, and it'll have a little bit of a wallow in the puddle, make it a bit bigger, and then an elephant will come along and make it even larger, and eventually they grow and they grow and they grow until you get really, really nice, beautiful, almost water holes in a way. So no, they're not artificial at all. The larger dams, Twin Dams, Treehouse Dam, Voyatilla Dam, Buffelshoek Dam, would all have been probably based around a pan like that, a natural collection point, but they would have been created artificially, so dug up. And we've seen recently, not that recently, a while ago, the way in which those water holes were dug out and prepared for the cyclone that we're about to experience. I doubt that was actually what we predicted, but apparently we are due to have a cyclone. I'm sure that Tristan and Taylor have mentioned it. Without any further ado and discussion of water, let's go to a water hole whilst they are still semi-full.
So there's unfortunately no mammals here. However, there are an abundance of terrapin, and look at them munching away on all the algae that has been forming on top of this water. We're at Djuma Dam at the moment. It's actually quite beautiful, but it's quite funny to also see the terrapins. As much as they're eating the algae, they've also got lots of algae attached to their shells, which creates, well, a nice little dress code. But look at them munching away. Come on guys, you better do a better job. You need to eat lots of it. Because the problem with this algae is that if these terrapins, which they are doing a sterling job at the moment, get too full and stop feasting upon it, or if they decide to move out of this dam, this algae can completely cover this water, which will not be good for everything that lives underneath it, because the algae will trap the sunlight from getting in, and also the oxygen then starts to deplete, and that's not a good thing. But they're swimming about very happily, and I'm sure that you could hear all that chattering. And you can see just to the left there are all the weavers, very excitedly flapping their wings, trying to advertise that their nest is the best and that females should choose them. So it's the males that do all the dangling upside down, but I'm sure at this time of the year they probably would have a mate already, and perhaps they've even laid eggs. Maybe some of them have even got chicks already. These are village weavers. Hello guys, very excited. Actually going to just sit very quickly and just have a little listen to them. It's one of my favorite noises that you hear in these summer months. Isn't that just a lovely noise? Now I love all the bird calls. It's my favorite thing. It actually puts me to sleep a little bit. It's one of my favorite things, just sitting and listening to them. And then, well, having a little siesta to the bird calls. And some of you might be thinking it's quite silly, especially to the new viewers that are perhaps just tuned in. And why have these birds built their nest over the water? And it's actually a very clever strategy. So why they do this is that there are not many cats that are going to want to swim or attempt to climb those branches, especially those thin branches that those nests are made at the end of, because they could snap and then they'll fall into the water. But it's also quite difficult for those chicks because they really only have one chance to fledge, and if it's not a good chance, unfortunately they're going to fall straight down to the water where they will meet their fate. And it's actually quite common, but as common as that is, these birds have a very, very high success rate. Look at that one. He's still building. You're a little bit late, my friend. But isn't this just absolutely incredible? This is really cool. So the most amazing way that they start to build their nest, but what I'm going to do is we'll actually chat about it when you come to us again. It seems as though Mr. Hosana is sneaking up to some elephants.
So Hosana did have a visit by the Ellies, and the Ellies then bypassed him and came along to this waterhole. So he's still sitting, resting, looking very smitten with himself that he hasn't been disturbed by the Ellies, and the Ellies have no idea that he was even there. They walked right behind him and there was no issues whatsoever. So they've now come to this little mud wallow where they've had a royal time. You can see they're absolutely covered. The little baby was throwing mud all over itself, and so it seems like a really great place to have. Now, this waterhole is also in quite a bit of shade, and given that it's as hot as it is, it's a great place for the Ellies to come cool down. And you can see the little ones making hay with all the nice grass there. So it's found itself a really nice little patch of green grass, and it's going to use its trunk to be able to eat that and get to all that nutrient-rich grass that's growing in amongst this watery mud. Now, in these areas where you get this clay-type soil, there's often quite a bit of nutrients and very, very tasty vegetation that grows here. So you find the elephants will often come down and eat in this area after having a mud wallow. And as you see that little male walking away, you can see where he sprayed the mud. He sprayed his mud very strategically on the back of his ears, so he knows that that's where it's going to cool him down the quickest, and so he's gotten to the ears to be able to try and wet those veins and cool everything down nicely. Now, while we were kind of coming in here, we had some Franklin's alarm calling, so I wonder if little Shongile isn't somewhere here as well, and these elephants maybe disturbed her. I'm just looking around in case. It seemed the Franklin got a big fight, but it could have also been the elephants. Maybe the elephants threw some mud and the Franklin was sitting somewhere close by and unfortunately got sprayed a little bit. So I'm just going to go back up to the road and see if we can catch these Ellies crossing the road, and then we'll go back to Hosana and see what he's up to. Like I say, he didn't seem too fazed by these elephants. They came walking behind him and he literally lifted his head for 2 seconds and then decided, well, it's not really anything I need to worry about, and went straight back to sleep again. So he's not too worried, and there they are coming over the road. So now that they've had their nice wallow, it's time to carry on, go find a shady area and carry on feeding. Remember, elephants have bad digestive systems, so they need to spend vast majority of their day looking for food. And when it's hot like this, it's nothing better than just cooling down in the mud and then going and feeding again. And look at those ears flapping. You can see they're moving a lot, and that's a good sign that it's really warm today. And now that they've got all that moisture on those ears, that flapping is going to pull wind over, and it's going to be really nice and cool, and it's just going to aid in cooling that blood down even faster. Just going to try go forward a little bit. They are going to go into a quite dense bush area. It's an area that's very thick there, so I'm not sure if we're going to be able to hold on to them, but let's have a look and see. But what a welcome surprise. We were kind of sitting watching Hosana, and he was fast asleep, and there was very little going on, and all of a sudden we just heard this loud grumble as this female and her calf arrived, and she was quite vocal on her way to the water. I think she was having a moment of serious heat. And isn't that amazing? So elegant when they move into that. So did you hear that sound? And that's what she's been making quite a bit of. Now I wonder if she's not trying to find her herd. Given that it's just the two of them, maybe she's vocalizing like this, trying to contact the rest of them. You see when she vocalizes, she stops and then just pushes those ears out slightly, and those ears will then act like a satellite dish and be able to pick up sound and be able to see where the others are. Amazing. Alright, so as they disappear, we're going to go back to Taylor, who I believe has got some frantic activity with the weavers.
We're still sitting here, and I'm actually still watching our friend who's building his new home. And we'll have a look at him in a moment. There he is. He's come back. He actually disappeared to go and fetch another strand of long green grass. And it's really amazing as to how persistent these weavers really are. Now, as we look at them, we're mainly just seeing males. I haven't seen too many females. They're usually a lighter brown in color, not quite as colorful and as yellow as the males are. And Shelly, you were wondering, where do the females go, or where do they wait while the males construct the nests? They're actually quite gregarious. And I haven't seen too much of it here, but I used to see a lot of it in the Eastern Cape in South Africa, where you'll be driving along and out of the grass you'll see an entire group of females, maybe 10 to 30 altogether, all living about, and then eventually they split up once they've found their mate. So they're probably at the moment, they're probably all just waiting around, waiting for a potential nest. David, I think there's a female that just landed, just down to the left on the branch. Go zoom straight in and a bit to the right. Go up, 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 up. Okay, go to the right. There we go. There's a female. Do you see that? Very brief. So there's one hanging around. There's a couple of them, but not too many. So perhaps they've already chosen their mates. But let's have another look at our friend. Well, he's left his nest at the moment, but I'm sure he'll be back shortly. So there it is. Now you can see there's actually quite a few different nests that have sort of half been constructed. And these weavers won't just make one nest. Sometimes it takes up to 5 attempts before eventually they'll get a hit with a potential mate, and she'll decide that she really likes that one. And then if, they start building their nest, they'll abandon the ones that aren't favorable. But I was doing some reading the other day about these weavers, and it's actually quite remarkable. They say that one nest will take about 15 hours to construct, and I'm sure that goes on about how experienced you are, because I'm sure if it's your first time making a nest, it might take you a little bit longer. You can see this one. So look. Too great just yet. I suppose things always start out a little bit messy, but the most amazing thing is that they use up to 400 blades of grass or pieces of palm trees, that type of thing, to weave their nests. Isn't that unbelievable? And I feel sorry for the person that got stuck with the task of, now we need to try and see how much material these birds use in their nests. Can you imagine having to deconstruct one of these nests and counting every bit of grass? I think that would be quite amazing. But I just think that these birds are incredible and such hard-working birds. Well, I suppose it's really only at this time of the year that they have to be hard-working. The rest of the time, I suppose they can sort of relax a little bit. But he's persistent. He comes back with a new piece of grass and he keeps weaving. And